focus
Just like
on
we're having a
you.
conversation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay if you end up looking over there, but not necessary.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And we're rolling. Hang on just
All
a
right,
second.
well-
Here we're going to start with this spelling thing, the spelling bee, Jeff.
Is it ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, why don't you just say your name and spell it for us so we have it. Carol, if you want to start.
Carol Moore, C-A-R-O-L-M-O-O-R-E.
Elaine Doucher, E-L-A-I-N-E, D as in David, A-L-C-H-E-R.
Great. So, before we started, I was just asking if you were from around here, and both of you said you were not, and you moved to Grand Rapids it's both in '71. So what brought you to?
Could you guys, Carol, can you just slide over a little closer to Elaine, just in the chair?
What's your fingers?
Yeah. It might feel funny, but it looks good on camera.
Well, our seats are about as close together
Okay.
as they can.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. How far down are you getting us?
Waist.
Okay.
Yep.
So what brought both of you to West Michigan in 1971?
Carol, you go.
Well, I moved up here with a friend of mine, having spent most of my life in Savannah, Georgia. Had taught school there in Atlanta after I graduated from college and got a chance to leave the South. And didn't know I wanted to leave the South, but it was an opportunity to experience another part of the country. So I moved here and stayed for the next 33 years.
Good.
Well, in my family, when we went to college, the examples from my brothers was that we would go away from home. So I was living in Connecticut, and we were living in Connecticut, my family. So Yukon or Wellesley or all those kind of things, that was not interesting to me. My mother had gone to college away. My father had gone away. My brothers had gone away. So I ended up in Mexico. And I was studying Mayan art and architecture. That was when I was 17 and just going to college. And when I was down there, I met some students from Grand Valley. And so we struck up a friendship. We actually lived together in a kind of convent thing where we were going to college. And so then after I got back to Iowa, which is where I was, then all of a sudden we said, let's go visit these friends. And so we visited the friends at Grand Valley, which was TJC at the time, Thomas Jefferson. And so I loved it. I finished the year out in Iowa and came and moved here. That was 1971. It was 71 because I went to college in 70, so it was the next year, 71. And I was 18. Then I moved here and went to college. Then I got my teaching degree and my art degree. And the rest is history. I just ended up making a life for myself teaching in the Grand Rapids Public Schools and being an artist here in town.
And what was both of your experiences when you first sort of moved here in terms of, West Michigan culture, if you will? And were both of you at that point already identified as out lesbians at that point when you first moved?
No,
No?
no.
Okay.
I knew it was, but I was not identified in that way.
Okay.
I got a job, luckily, at the public schools with the public school system. I had previously taught in Atlanta. My first year of teaching there made $6,800. My first year of teaching here I made $12,000. So it was a good move financially in that way. And I didn't know anything about Grand Rapids. I mean, I just moved here because a friend of mine knew the city. You could have thrown a dart at a map; it wouldn't have made any difference to me. I was just moving, so I didn't really experience the culture at all. I just got my job and started teaching, and then just started really socializing first through the people I worked with, and then through all other avenues that sort of branched off from that. But I didn't know anything about Grand Rapids when I moved here.
I knew very little. My parents had brought me there the summer before college started. But it was weird. We were just out in this cornfield. Grand Valley was so small. we'd been in Yucatan previously, and there was no Cancun. There was just Merida and these little outposts. So here, when we wanted health food, we went to the Seventh-day Adventist place on Division, and it seemed like a long drive into Grand Rapids on M45, which was just cornfields, so yeah, it was strange being here. There wasn't much here. Everything for us, for me, my friends at that time, was the college and was Thomas Jefferson.
So then when did both of you move to kind of the neighborhood that you live in now? The Eureka, Fairmont, all that sort of, that what has become in many ways sort of an enclave, a community of people that's been there for quite a while. When did you all move into that area?
I moved there on the fourth Friday in 1978. Fourth Friday is a big day in the public school system. And I had lived previously in a duplex in Wyoming. And
I remember that because we went
yeah.
she had this big old Ford, what was it, Grand something.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
LTD.
we must have fit 12 women in the car. We went to her little condo, and then we must have fit 12 of us in the LTD, and drove to the spooky, like Halloween spook house down in 100th Street or something. We're all in the car.
I forgot about that.
We were babies then.
But I was renting this duplex, and one day, I think it was in the early fall, one of the secretaries in the office I was working with the school system, we were just driving around for lunch, and it was close by this neighborhood, and I drove by, and there was this older woman out there shoveling the driveway, and I was kind of rubbernecking, and she said, "Are you interested in buying a house?" I said, "Well, sure." So she took my name, and a couple of years later, she called me and said her daughter had died, and she wanted to sell the house that she was shoveling the driveway up. And so I walked through it, and I've been there since then. That was in 1978. So.
What's your name?
Well, when I graduated from Thomas Jefferson in 1974, then actually some friends had lived on Eureka. And so what happened is an apartment opened up there. And so I moved in, and that was in 1974. And Carol hadn't lived there yet, and I was just renting. But then it was not until 1980. There was a house across the street that became vacant, and it was for sale. And my brother helped me buy it. We bought it for $25,000, and I live there today.
It's a great street, and we've been there a long time, but there are a lot of people who've been there longer than we have, and they're still there. So there's a huge taproot of stability in that neighborhood, and I've got neighbors that have been there for 50, 55 years. So it was a kind of a Dutch neighborhood that I think when the next generation came, the children didn't want to stay. They moved to the suburbs, and the elderly parents stayed there. And some are still there. And others then eventually had to make 2 units out of 1-unit houses, and then they became rental. So when we moved in, it was on the decline. And it had not bottomed out yet. We didn't exactly know that. We just landed and started working on our houses. And we've been working on them ever since. But we, because a number of us sort of landed at that intersection of Virginia and Eureka, and I'm right on the corner, so I see everything coming from every direction, good and bad. We've all just been very connected, and have a good sense of neighborhood and community, and help each other, whether we're personal friends or whether we're just neighbors. We're all very connected. We know pretty much everybody who lives on the street. We went through periods of time where we had street parties, and it's just evolved. But there's just a real, I guess I would call it a taproot. People stayed there, they love their houses, they're not elegant, but they're very well built, and I think they're elegant to me, but they're not heritage hill. There would be more working class architecture. But it's been a pleasure to live there and
Yes.
to see your house evolve and see your relationships in the neighborhood evolve.
We've seen people come and go of all sorts, but let's talk about the LGBT community. We've seen many people come and many people go, and we've seen a core group stay. We've had men die of AIDS. We've had men die of cancer. We haven't had any deaths in the women's community.
Although we're dealing with cancer in the community now.
And they stood by me when I went through my cancer journey. But we've seen people come and go, and then we've had, like, Diana was going to leave. She bought a house, and we went and helped her paint it, and then she couldn't tear herself away. And so she just said, you know what, I can't move. It was this thing.
And then she did move, and then she came back.
Did she move? She did move, okay. Oh, she did move to Seattle, then she came back. Yeah, so.
Jeff, move that cup, would you, closer towards you, yeah.
But you know, what is so, I think, unique about our neighborhood and our community in the neighborhood is that our best friends are our neighbors. And these are long-term friendships that we have. And so
We didn't
you just
even know
can't-
each other.
No.
We worked in the same school building. That was how we first got to know one another. Then all of a sudden we saw each other on the street.
And then we started playing softball together, and
Yeah, and we did a lot of things together. And we've never been lovers, but other people have. And it's been good. And I think we have a very strong friendship, I would say. Just deep,
yeah.
very deep.
There's not anybody who lives there that wouldn't help you out with any project. You can just count on it.
So a sense I've always got, is, as long as I've known, like you and Dottie and other people who've sort of been in that area for a long time, the sense of community is just really, really strong. It's inspiring. Well, can either of you speak to maybe when you, at some point, maybe got more politically involved in issues around, around LGBT, struggles for equality or creating more public spaces. When, if at all, I know it has, so when did that kind of happen for either of you?
You go first this time.
Okay. Well, when I was at Grand Valley, we had a number of professors who we brought in, and I say we because there were a couple people there, a couple women there. Barbara Gibson was probably the main professor at that time who was bisexual. And she brought out a bunch of women just all of a sudden started showing up who were gay, and I showed up there too. And I was a very strong feminist. I'd been raised feminist, and in Connecticut we had consciousness raising groups in high school. And I never really thought I was lesbian. I didn't quite get the men thing. I participated in that at Grand Valley, but I never found any connection, and I had boyfriends who said, what's the matter? I really like you. This happened to me probably 3 times. Why are you not, like, in this? And I just didn't know what to say until I figured out that I was a lesbian. And once I found that, it was that Eureka moment. It was, oh my God, this is the whole issue here that I've been dealing with. And it hadn't dawned on me previously. So I think I'd been attracted to friends in high school, but I didn't think that meant anything like spend your life with women. But it did. It ended up meaning spend my life with women. And at that time, then back in those days, we brought Jill Johnston here, who was writing for for the Village Voice. We brought Chicago Women's Liberation Rock Band, came to our farm, this old hippie farmhouse in Jenison, and played, and we had a giant dance, and we brought Robin Morgan in, poet Robin Morgan. We brought in Marge Piercy. Then we hired, because in those days the students helped hire the faculty at Thomas Jefferson. So we hired Linda Smith, philosophy. We hired Sherry Redding. We hired Jerry Van Syke, artist. And at that time, I was an artist, feminist, philosopher. That was what I was interested in, and I just pursued that. And so we did a lot of poetry writing, a lot of consciousness raising, a lot of study of the personal is political, and how does that relate to our lives, and how are we living this out. So we had all this intellectual stuff going on, and reading, and exploring, and talking. And then on the other side, we were starting to meet these lesbians in Grand Rapids who were more what you might call working class. We called that, I mean, there were these classes of people who didn't go to college, or people who had a different kind of life than at college. And so, and many of them had been to college, I'm not saying that, but and then we'd meet them down at Papa Joe's, which is now Club 43 or 2 or whatever it is now, and dance. And then we started the Gertrude Stein Literary Society, which was on the corner of that same block there. And we'd open it up every Friday and Saturday night and have either a movie or consciousness raising or food, and there was a pool table, and we just gather as a group. And,
this was on Division there, right by
yeah.
Club 43?
Yeah, right on the corner there. And we rented that, and everybody, I don't know how we paid for it. We put money in a pot, paid for it. It was $90 a month or something.
Oh.
That's what I remember. And we had a lot of fun, a lot of dancing and that kind of thing. And as I moved into the teaching realm and the school thing, and out from college, we still connected with the college group until a lot of the lesbians got kicked out, and then they went to different places, scattered. And but we kept our group here and continued to work on our being lesbians, and what does that mean, and how do we define our community, and what's important to us, and those kind of things.
I came at it from a different perspective, because I was never a student of that culture. I was in a very traditional school situation in the community ed department, and so I was dealing with adults for the most part. And I'm just kind of finding my way through that. And I think probably when I went to the March in Washington for the Equal Rights Amendment, 76 I think it was, I think that's where I thought, wow, okay. Because it was very empowering to be with so many people who are like-minded, who are making a really public political statement. That amendment never passed, I think, is just incredibly ridiculous. And I think a lot of it has to do with, it had to do with the time then. I think it would probably pass today, but that no one resurrects it is kind of interesting from a political point of view. But the wording of that, and also the wording of the ordinance that finally happened in Grand Rapids, to me there's kind of a word problem. They always say, don't discriminate on the basis of sex. And to me, it doesn't have to do with sex, it has to do with gender. And so I call it gender orientation. Who do I want to spend my personal time with? And so it has nothing to do with sex. Sex is a little piece of your life, which everybody experiences in one way or another. But it's about who your personal friends are going to be, and who do you want to live with, and who do you want to love with. So I think that word, putting sex in there, just is kind of inflammatory for some people, and it keeps others away from kind of embracing that we're all human beings deserving of all the rights and opportunities that everyone else has. So I think that Equal Rights Amendment march in Washington, and then dealing with it on the local level with John Logie, who was he the mayor then, or was he running for mayor? He was mayor. I can remember meeting with him, and I think in the ground floor of Fountain Street Church with other members of the community and talking to him about, this is important. And then the public hearing on that was just incredible. I have never heard so much vitriol in all my life. I thought, why do these people hate me so much? You don't even know who I am. So it was, seeing that dichotomy and seeing the rage that it evoked, I found quite exhausting and so uncalled for. So I think that's what kind of put me politically. It's like, we got to get ahead of this stuff. This is so old, and it's so wasteful, and it's so wasteful of people's lives and energy. Unbelievable.
I remember those hearings as well, and was astounded by the clearly the hatred that people had, both
Based
for
on
ideas
what?
and then just, right, I know, it was amazing. But it passed.
Yeah. And guess what? The world didn't come to an end.
No. Do you remember during that campaign to get that ordinance passed, were there any outside forces or entities that were organizing against it? I mean, we've heard from other people that they thought maybe the Michigan Family Forum or some of these other entities may have had a hand in kind of either providing some, organizing